Okay, well, if they had told me I was going to have to follow Jean, I might have reconsidered coming up on stage. But I am delighted to be here. And I'm delighted because after working at Airbnb for 3 years, I've had an opportunity to take a step back from what I understand about customer experience and have a fresh set of eyes on what it really means. So the story that I want to share to you, or with you, is really one that maybe some of you know. I don't know, how many of you ever have traveled on Airbnb? Have you used Airbnb at all? Wow, that's fantastic. Thank you for being customers. How many of you host? Probably a lot less. Oh, there's a brave soul. We're going to talk about that in just a minute. But when I took a look at where we have been over the last 9 years or so, it really became apparent to me, if I put the customer experience lens over what we have done, some interesting themes emerge. And one of the things that we're really interested in customer experience is success. So this presentation is really pulling out the story of Airbnb and what are some of the success factors that I have seen and some of the evidence of that success, because what I'm hoping you'll take away from this particular presentation is maybe some inspiration on how to do things differently. Because if there's anything about Airbnb that you should know, is that we do almost everything differently. So I'm going to take you through some of these parts of the business. I am going to take you through the parts of the business. So, hang on. And you will be happy to know that only 2 of the companies represented here use Keynote. And this is all PowerPoint-based organization, so we might have a few hiccups, but we'll get through it. Okay, so I think when you think of the value chain of customer experience, you think about your employees and their satisfaction, loyalty, engagement, all the way up to customer loyalty, which is, oftentimes the pinnacle of what you want from customer experience. And there's a whole bunch of other things in between. And at the end of the day, it's really the experience is the sum of all the parts, right? And so when I thought about the different themes of what we're doing, it's our business and how we do it. It's our culture that enables all of that how and what we do. And then it's this notion of building partnerships across the ecosystem. So the first thing I want to talk about is success factor number 1, and that's our business. So the Airbnb story really can't be told unless there's context involved. And you can probably appreciate, those of you who have been in rapid growth or disruptive businesses, this might sound a little familiar to you. Those of you who have grown up in businesses that are huge and take a lot longer to change, this might seem a little odd. But let me take you through it. So in customer experience, we talk about leadership and the importance of leadership. And I tell you that I've always known that or thought I knew it. I didn't really know it until I started working at Airbnb. These are our 3 founders. That's Joe, Nate, and Brian. Brian's the guy standing on a little table, by the way. And they started Airbnb in 2008, okay? Became an official company in August of 2008. They had no idea, none, of what was going to happen to them over the next decade. And so they all kind of broke up the business into things that they were really passionate about. Joe is passionate about how we attract and retain incredible employees. Brian is obviously really interested, as the CEO, of how do we continuously innovate and attract new guests. And then Nate, he's our product guy, how do we attract and maintain our great relationships with amazing hosts? And so those 3 questions really came out of their awareness of the customer experience. You talk about walking in the customer's shoes. These guys were the original hosts. That's how we started. They were broke. They were looking to start a business. There was a design conference coming in, and they reached out and grabbed 3 designers who didn't have a place to stay because the hotels were all booked and overcharging. So for $80, they provided a nice hardwood floor, 3 beds, and breakfast. And that's how Airbnb was started. Who would have thought it would have become the business that it is today with a $35 billion valuation? So that did not happen just by magic. That happened with a heck of a lot of work and a lot of customer intimacy. Their next journey was to go to New York and to be the guests of every single host that had signed up so that they could do the photography, write the reviews, and feel what it was like to be part of this whole ecosystem that was starting to build. But this is something that I think is perhaps not unique, but it's really, really important. It's really important to every brand that I know of and that probably you know of that has to deal with customer experiences and really wants to grow. Like, how do you differentiate and create value for everybody, right? Not a win-lose situation, but winners for every single stakeholder. How do we manage the business so everybody wins? So that's what motivates the leadership. And so at the end of the day, what Airbnb does is we connect people to travel experiences. So whether you're wanting to stay in a room for the night, by the way, if you're ever in Cedar City, Utah, this is one of the rooms you can rent from my mother. She's a super host. Or you can get an apartment for the weekend, you can rent a castle, you can be in a treehouse for a week, or maybe you even want to be in a villa for a month. But we provide places and travel experiences. And as the years went on, and as we intensely listened to what people really wanted out of their travel experiences, we found that they really wanted more. And growth is really part of the experience that is important. So if you see those little yellow dots, in 2009, we had 4,700 guests stay on Airbnb. In 2017, we have 35 million, and we are in over 34,000 cities and 190 countries in 9 years. And just a little data point, there was 1.3 million people staying on Airbnb on New Year's Eve this year. So that's a huge amount of folks moving. That's a huge lot of money passing back and forth. There's a huge lot of opportunities for failure as well as success. And so I want to talk about some of the challenges that we have in making all of this happen. Because at the end of the day, it can't be just about listings. I'm going to see if this is going to work. So I don't know if you know, but we have had a whole new product launch that came out of the results that we found from all of the feedback that we had been getting from our hosts and from our guests, that they didn't want to just stay in a place, they wanted to belong in a place. And the other thing that we really found was that our host told us that, actually we heard a lot of people say, well, I don't really have a house that I want to host, but I can do this thing. And what you just saw were some of the experiences that are being hosted on Airbnb. So all of these are privately curated by Airbnb, and so you can go to the markets where we offer these, and then you can stay in a listing and then also have some outrageously crazy and amazing experiences on Airbnb. So we had to innovate twice in 2 years. So what enables a company to be able to do that? If we have a goal of to create a world, not just a company, but a world where everyone can belong anywhere, that's huge. And there are a lot of things that can get in the way of that vision. And so I want to talk about some of the success factor number 2. One of the number one things that is an enabler to Airbnb doing as much as we've done in a short amount of time as we've done it is our culture. So what is culture? Well, the CXPA, if we have a customer-centric culture, what is it? The CXPA defines it as creating and nurturing a culture through the behaviors, practices, and standards, Jean talked about a lot of those, that encourage all employees to focus on delivering outstanding customer experiences. And so one of the biggest issues we have is trust. And in fact, all of us have the same issue, but frankly, we've been told our entire lives not to talk to strangers. We're a company that puts strangers in strange people's homes. So there is a lot to be designed for with that as a potential barrier. So I want you to do something for me. Let's get a little bit of sense of how this works. So if everybody could take out your phone with all your data, all your pictures, all your secrets, and I want you to unlock it, okay? Then I want you to find somebody you don't know, and I want you to give it to them. I'm not kidding. Okay? You'll probably get it back. Come on, guys. I see. No, come on. You have to play. You got to play. All right. I want you to pay attention. I see some nervous giggles and kind of ha ha ha. How does that feel? Think about that. All right, does everybody have some stranger's phone? There's nothing more personal than your home. Your phone's pretty close, but your home's pretty personal, right? So that twinge that you felt as you were giving away reluctantly your phone, it's a little bit like a host feels the first time that they have their first guest. Now, think about you are holding somebody's phone. What does that feel like? Do you feel like chucking it in a toilet somewhere? Do you feel like stepping on it? No, you don't. You feel responsible, like you know that this is something that's precious to somebody, and you feel responsible, don't you? So our challenge at Airbnb is to create an environment that produces technology and experiences that engender trust, that people can feel responsible holding the things that other people hold dear, and the world becomes a slightly better place. So thank you for doing that. You're all very brave. You can give the phones back. Let me know if somebody doesn't get your phone back. So one of the things that really has occurred to me is that, and I think once I say this, it's going to be a little bit of a duh, but great customer experiences don't happen organically. They are intentional. You have to design for them. And your culture is the bedrock in which everything your company does. So you have to pay attention to it. Now, how many of you have your company values on your badge in your office? It's posted somewhere around. Anybody have that in their companies? Probably. That's a good thing. Values, again, I've worked in industry for, well, longer than I'm going to admit right here. So I've never seen a company that tests itself almost on a daily basis in decision-making based on our values. And just really quickly, our values are being a host, right? So all of us are encouraged to host either experiences or places. Champion the mission. All of us love to travel. We all love to go experience new things and embrace the adventure. Life is a rocky road. Get on your backpack and a good pair of shoes and just go with it. And then serial entrepreneur, that harkens back to when our founders, again, were really broke. And remember I told you they got some hosts in New York and that sort of thing? Well, they didn't have any money to build a website before that. So what they did during the Democratic Convention is they used their design expertise. Joe and Brian are both designers. And they built, I should have brought pictures of them, but they did cereal boxes that were designed. They were Captain McCain and Obama O's, and they sold them. They were personalized. They sold them for $40, and they ended up making $30,000 to fund their website. So that's kind of become one of those legends in the company that we still talk about and is encouraged. Like, if you have a great idea and you're going to put your life behind it, you're going to put your work behind it, your reputation, be a serial entrepreneur and get it handled. I'm just going to stand right here. So I talked about partnership, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about this, but the people we work with are so incredibly important, aren't they? We spend more time with the people we work with than we do with our own families. So we spend an inordinate amount of time and effort making sure that we get the right kind of folks that fit into our culture. We put them through a whole lot beforehand. They get core value interviews, which means stakeholders from other parts of the organization that have nothing vested in that person's work, but just as a person, they all get interviewed, and they all have to be approved twice. If even one core interviewer says, nah, this person's not going to be a fit, no matter what the expertise or the level of that person, they don't get into Airbnb. So we have a lot of folks working for us now. We're, I think, 3,800 or 3,600 folks internally, but we have about 5,000 outsourced folks who are in call centers all around the world. We have 10 different partners in 22 different locations to handle all of the languages and the locations and times. So that's a lot of folks to move through the organization and to inculcate with your cultural values and everything and to hold them accountable. So one of the other things is, in fact, we don't see a lot of customer words on the wall or anything like that. You won't find our values on the wall, but this is what our offices look like. And there's this notion of belong anywhere, right? That's our vision. Well, it's also baked into the way that we work. We don't really have desks. We don't have a lot of room for clutter. We just work wherever we want to. And all of our conference rooms are modeled after listings somewhere in the world. So you're literally feeling, you're exposed to the customer experience on some level, a very visual level, but that's important. When you think about how do you keep the customer top of mind, well, what if you're doing business in somebody's living room? Because that's what it feels like. There are no bedrooms, by the way, that they're all living rooms and kitchens and that sort of thing. Now, I told you we had about 5,000 frontline employees all around the world. This is what their outsourced centers look like. So we don't talk about our vendors who provide outsourcing to us as vendors. They are partners in a lot of different ways, all up until the contractual line of co-employment. We push that because we want those folks who are serving you to be in love with Airbnb and what they're doing and to make sure that they serve you well. So some of the other evidence points is we make sure that empathy is a part of what we do. One of the programs that I steward is the CX Immersion. CX is what we call our support centers, which is not confusing for me at all, but it's our customer care centers around the world. And we have a curated experience where you come anywhere, anyone from around the company can come and experience what it's like to be on the front lines. And then we also enable team ticket solving. So our goal is to make sure that anyone in the company can use our help systems to solve customer problems, and we do that in kind of a fun gaming fashion. We also, like I mentioned, host, and we travel. The company actually pays us to do traveling each quarter. So that makes sure that we all know what it feels like to be a guest as well as a host. So we're working on building a listening culture. One of the things that strikes me that I remember working at a couple of former companies, and the research and design organizations were always like these little cast-off groups who were cranking out decks and doing focus groups and all these kinds of things. At Airbnb, they're one of our prized organizations. Everything we do, from the decks that we do to the way that we work, is imbued with this sense of design. And I can tell you that when you do something like that, when you're intentional about the outcome that you're solving for, and you know what's going to be what you want at the end of that game, it makes everybody work better. It makes everything you do just that much more aha or wow. It puts that factor in there. It's a little intimidating sometimes, but it really does make sure that you're working your hardest and at your best. So we have a listening culture, I would say. We measure touch points. We are out on social media doing social care. Every trip gets reviewed, every person gets reviewed, and guests and host relationships are measured, and then we take action as a result. So we take, obviously, this is something that's just part and parcel to all of our jobs, but making sure that we're understanding the needs, the cultural differences, and the opportunities that present ourselves through our customers' voice. And our customers tell us a lot. And we also listen so that we can sometimes surprise and delight. How cool would it be in your company? You're going to laugh at me when I tell you this. We have a love team. And the love team has a very strategic mission. Their mission is to surprise and delight our guests and hosts at various touch points. Sometimes they are recovery, right? So when things don't go well, we will surprise them with something. When anything, like if they can't get into their listing or something gets canceled, we'll send them to dinner, make sure they have a place for the night, and redo their whole experience for them. And if we find out somebody's going to get engaged or going to get married, we give them gifts and those kinds of things. And so that's part of what Airbnb is about, is that little bit of that surprise and delight. And it doesn't take all that much to do that, but it reaps big rewards, especially in the social world. And sometimes we find that our customers actually surprise the heck out of us. This is Noah and Ben. And he was going to rent her room in Tel Aviv, but it was booked. But he was in town, and he said, hey, you want to go have a coffee? Well, long story short, they got married at the Airbnb offices last year. So amazing things happen when you bring people together under the right circumstances. And in fact, specifically, one of the things that I think we don't pay enough attention to in our relationships at work, maybe even in our regular lives, but making moments for magic to occur. And that doesn't mean just throwing a bunch of people in a room together and something might actually amazing happen, but really curating experiences that surprise and delight and bring out the wonder in people. And I think of our user groups that most companies have. And what would it be like to do something like Airbnb has pulled out of the hat, which is bringing 5,000 guests and hosts together, along with employees, for a 3-day hosting festival. And we did this in Paris. Unfortunately, it was right during the time of the bombing that happened, and we were just down the street from that, as a matter of fact. And that was an amazing experience for everybody, but we did this just recently in LA, and we brought everybody together with guests and hosts showing off all the stuff that they do. It was really like a big festival. So, it's fine and well to do things for your customers and your employees because they're important, but what happens when external pressures come at you? And we've had a lot. This past spring, we were accused of being a racist organization and promoting discrimination. We're a company that kind of prides ourselves on, not being that way. So it was a little bit of a shock, I think, from a cultural perspective, but our leadership took that extremely seriously and organized a massive effort that included Eric Holder coming in and doing an assessment, the NAACP, and a whole host of folks. We got feedback from everybody, and we radically changed the way our technology works, the way our platform works, so that we can make sure that discrimination isn't happening on our platform. But this could have been something we said, nah, that's not us. But our values said, if we're going to make the world a better place, we have to start here. And so the company has made a huge step, and this is just part of the way that we work now. So that's what can happen when you actually live by your values. And then success factor number 3 is our partnerships. And I've alluded to them throughout, but it's an arrangement. I think this is important, where parties cooperate to advance their mutual interests. And so actually our customers could be termed our partners, as well as our employees, as well as the vendors that serve us and make us successful. One of the most important folks in our ecosystem is the host, right? So we would have a pretty cool platform, but no business without our hosts. And so this is a depiction of our journey that we've talked about. What are the key moments along the journey? This is the host journey. Each one of these has a designation from the time that you start to think that you want to host all the time to the point where you start sharing about your experiences. And so this iconic journey map is used throughout the company, and we do talk in those different stages and journeys. And this animation might look a little familiar to you. I don't know if you have kids, if you ever saw Lilo and Stitch. The artist who did that was the person who worked with 9 months with our executive team to create these journey maps and a visualization of what does it feel like in that particular journey. And that might be an idea that you could do, right? Move beyond the, the chevrons and the lists of bullets and really figure out what does that ideal experience look and feel like, and then have, an actual picture of it so that people can viscerally respond. And remember I talked about designing a system for trust. In Airbnb, we don't think about ourselves as a travel company. We're not a hotel company. What we are is a community of travelers and guests. Guests and hosts, I'm sorry. And we all love travel, right? So in order to do that, we have to make ourselves available, and we have to make ourselves visible. And this is just a picture of my account. I've been verified, so people know that I'm actually who I say I am. And every time I stay, and I've probably stayed at 40 Airbnbs now, and oh, by the way, when we travel for business, we stay in the same places. Wrap your mind around that. You're staying in the same house, not the same bedrooms, the same house or the same condos with your colleagues. And I gotta tell you, it's been a great experience to get to know folks in a very different way than you do at work. But that challenges who we are as people and what we're comfortable with. We even put walls up between folks that we work with in day out. Well, when you live with somebody for a few days, things change. And then make sure that when things happen, because they do, that would be silly to think that millions of people would get together and something bad doesn't happen. You just make sure that you have predicted that it's probably going to happen and you're there for folks when it does. And I know I'm running out of time, so I'm going to just wrap this up by saying, too, that we need to be able to design for engagement. Once you bring a customer along a journey, how do you keep them with you? Because just as soon as you've accomplished one thing, once you've engaged them around a particular interaction or around a product or whatever, you've got to move on to that next thing. And so we use, I haven't used any data, you've noticed. I've done that intentionally because most of us are very data-focused. Data resides behind all of this, and we measure everything maniacally. But we do that mainly so that we can know what our customers need and want from us, and then be able to innovate based on their expectations. And one of the things that we learned was that it is really hard to be a host. It's hard to have people in your home, especially if you do it frequently, and that you want to be rewarded. You're serving other fellow citizens. And so we created a superhost program that singles out the stars of our host community that has very specific criteria that are measured on a regular basis, and then new hosts are inducted into this category. And these are probably our most profitable customers, our most special parts of the ecosystem, because they're the ones who are making it all happen. So we want to make sure that they are happy. And so in the beginning I said that if this is all, we're customer experience at the end of the day. It's journeys, it's ecosystems, it's everything. It's a sum of all of our parts, right? And so how do you measure how that comes out? Well, there's lots of ways. And I think that the metrics are really important, and we have lots of them. But then you think about, well, what do people say about you? What do your employees say? What do your customers say? And then, if you take that out one ring further, what do your partners say about you? I know a lot of companies who pride themselves on how much they can extract from the vendors that serve them, not really recognizing the fact that they are enabling their very success. So it's a little bit of a challenge, and I think they undercut themselves. But that said, I thought, well, what can I share that would show you maybe there's some things that are going right here? So I went with, this is my all-time favorite thing. This is an outsourced partner. These are frontline employees who serve you. They created this to thank us. They are not professionals.
Pleasure, this is what we give to every host and guest who want it all. It's our pleasure to give you just the best, so sit back and relax, and we'll do the rest. Airbnb, 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 Airbnb. It's the joy of giving what you're happy about. Listening to you when you speak, help me out. It's our motto, it's our creed, the mission and values of Airbnb.
Thank you.